Good day. Thanks for being with us. Today we've got Marcos Neves with us. Marcos, Professor, sorry about that. And Marcos is all the way from Brazil.
Yep.
And from the University of Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
So, please tell us about yourself.
Welcome to South Africa.
It's my pleasure to be here. I love this country. I think it's my visit maybe number 15 to 20.
Wow.
So I had a chance to speak in several of your cities and to visit the beauty of this country and things that I admire a lot. So it's my pleasure to be here. I'm a professor, I'm an agronomist from the University of São Paulo. Then I did all my career in strategy, business strategy. I did my master's, PhD, and I'm linked to the University of São Paulo for almost 30 years, teaching the areas of strategic planning and management and applied to food and agribusiness chains. So that's my background. I also built up a consultancy company in 2004, which is now 21 years old. It's called Markestrat. It's the merge of the words marketing and strategy, and has around 100 employees in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
And 12 partners. So we do projects for companies, food chains, associations in several countries of the world. We are based in São Paulo, in the city of Ribeirão Preto, São Paulo state. And the last initiative was to create in 2024 a university together with my partners and an strong educational group in Brazil. We created a school specific for agribusiness called Harven Agribusiness School, and we are going to the second year, almost 300 undergraduate students of business management, law, and production engineering. So I'm involved in business as an entrepreneur, a professor, and also in education, managing education.
Wow. That's quite an introduction. Goodness gracious, you clearly have been very busy.
So you're not just going to talk to us about citrus. I've immediately got a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, incredible. Your country's lucky to have someone like you that's doing all these things for its citizens and for its people. And education is so important. So it's really great that you're doing that as well.
But
wow.
While we're on that subject, and it sounds like that the Brazilian population or community, there's an interest in agriculture. Am I correct in making that statement?
It's growing a lot. Let's say the agribusiness image, agriculture image in Brazil had a huge improvement in the last 20 to 30 years because it's what's sustaining the country. Half of what Brazil exports is based on food and agribusiness. If you look at the employment, is 1/3 of all the employment in the country. And when you look at the GDP, it's also 1/3 of the country. So it's what brings us the surplus in the trade balance. And Brazil did a wonderful job in the past 30 years. If I give you some numbers, these are impressive in terms of the market share Brazilian products occupy in the world, like giving you 2 or 3 numbers. In terms of soybeans, Brazil takes care of almost 60% of what's imported from all countries in the world. Sugar is 50%. Orange juice is 80%. Coffee, 33%. And then when you go to meats, Brazil is almost reaching 40% of what's imported by the world in beef. 40% in poultry, 30% in beef, and 20% in pork. So you can see that a recent study done by our research organization brings Brazil to be responsible for feeding 1 billion people in the planet. So it's an export-driven country in food and agribusiness. That's why, coming back to your question, the image of the sector in our population had a huge increase in terms of a positive view of the sector, because people know that's what's bringing money to the country, what's keeping value to the currency, and also what's creating jobs and opportunities for people.
And look, we don't know because we are curious. Is there a lot of big family farms in Brazil? Like, I know that there's a lot of family farms in South Africa that's 4, 5, 6 generations old. Is it the same in Brazil?
Yes, it's the same story. But it's when you're talking about Brazil, it seems it's relatively similar to you talking about Africa because it's several different states in a country that is very large. You know, Brazil occupies 50% of the continent of South America. So we have in the frontier regions very large farmers or let's say agricultural companies that are managing 500,000 hectares. And when you go to the south of Brazil, where we had a lot of European colonization, it's a model based upon cooperatives, with each cooperative 20, 30,000 farmers making part of the cooperative in small areas. And the families are all over because you have in these large farms families that are in the 3rd or 4th generation, and also in the smaller farms you have families that are in the 3rd, 4th generation working with agriculture.
Some of the numbers you mentioned of the commodities, like the list that you gave, starting with soybeans and all the rest, are you saying it feeds 1 billion people? That's a 7th of the world population. That's phenomenal. An eighth, an eighth, but no, okay, 7, an eighth. Thanks for correcting me. From one country. That's incredible. You know, I think a lot of the times people, well, we certainly didn't know that.
Yeah, well, and to add on to that, if you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and this is just what we hear in the media out there, what we see on the internet, is that there's a lot of negativity around a lot of the agriculture from Brazil because they say it's deforestation and things like that. How bad is that in terms of, like, from somebody on the ground?
It is probably the worst problem that we have, the problem of international image, mostly with the final consumers, not with B2B or the buyers, because the buyers visit Brazil all the time. So you have the food industry in Europe, in Japan, that source commodities from Brazil. When you talk to these guys, they know what Brazil is doing. But when you go to the final consumer, because a lot of negative points arise on the press, people tend to think that the growth of our production is being done over the Amazon or over forest areas, and that's something that when you go a little bit deeper and you get the numbers, people calm down a little bit because they see what Brazil is doing. I'll give you just 3 or 4 numbers. Brazil has probably the strongest, the toughest environmental code in the world, because you have, as a farmer in the region where I live, you have to set aside 20% of your area and bring it back to what it was 120, 200 years ago. When you go to the Midwest of Brazil, it's 35%. And if you are in the northern part, in the Amazon region, it's 80%. So if you have a farm, you cannot use 80% of your area. So
wow, that's incredible.
That's incredible.
Yes.
I've never heard that from any other country.
Yeah, that's the Brazilian Forestry Code approved in 2012. It was very painful for farmers because imagine that you have a hotel. Suddenly people tell you that 20% of your rooms cannot be occupied anymore because they're going to be converted to...
Yes.
That's what happened to farmers. So they had to set aside this area. And like the state of São Paulo, where I live, every year you have a higher coverage. So the issue of deforestation is not linked to several of the states of Brazil. Of course, you do have criminals in the Amazon, people extracting wood to sell. And after an area is destroyed, the cattle comes. People will take advantage of that area, but that's a criminal activity. That's not linked to farmers. And other very important points is that Brazil is leading the use of biologicals. Brazil leads the world in terms of renewable sources of electricity. It's almost 90% of the electricity used in the country is coming from renewable sources. When you look at energy as a whole, then you consider fuel. Brazil has like 47% of all energy used in the country coming from renewable sources. For instance, European Union's average is less than 20. So I used to tell people that mathematics, the math is together with Brazil and Brazilian agribusiness. The problem is that people don't know these numbers,
Yes.
and they only see issues of fires, criminal activities in the Amazon. So it's a question of communicating better. But I used to say that in when you consider marketing issues, it's very difficult when you have a bad product and a good advertisement, because suddenly people will see that they are buying what doesn't have any value. But what happens in Brazilian agribusiness is that we have a great product with a bad communication. So it's easier to fix. It's just fixing the communication, what you're doing well within your society, taking information for people. That's what we need to do. So your program will convert a lot of people of the image they had about Brazil and what they have after I give just some of the numbers here.
Well, even starting with us, my mouth is hanging open with all the numbers you just mentioned about what Brazil produces. And you're absolutely right about the preconceived ideas that people have. Oh, they must be producing that because they're busy completely flattening the Amazon in order to produce this, and fires in the Amazon. It's amazing how traditional media feeds off a previous story and compounds the incorrect information instead of giving an alternative.
And the person on the street that he just said, where the actual who's got the wrong impression of agriculture in Brazil, they just read a headline.
Yeah, and we had a problem 2 years ago, because you may remember that Brazil had a very far-right president and government, and he had the huge issues with the media, international media, because international media, they don't like the far-right all over the world. We are seeing now an example in the U.S.
Indeed.
So what happens is that when you don't like a certain government, everything that's negative, even if it's a small point, you're going to turn it to a huge point, to a headline. And this is what happened in Brazil from 2018 to 2022. Most of what entered up the media had a kind of it was a higher content than the real fact, because with that I'm gonna do bad things, or I'm gonna put some problems towards their president. So let's make this a headline. So as you can see, probably in the last 2 years you're not listening about Brazil anymore.
Yes.
But it's the same. The only thing is that we changed government now to the left, and now people seem to forgot what happened in Brazil in terms of
it's quite interesting that
I'm not criticizing. It's a question of just analyzing headlines and mathematics.
There's a saying that says, bad news spreads itself. Good news needs help.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased that you're bringing us some good news to tell us about, what is really happening on the ground.
So listening to this, there's a lot of opportunity in Brazil in the agribusiness sector for people to go in and create a fantastic living.
Well, when you have a chance to visit, and I hope you can go soon over there. As you told me, it's your to-do list. Brazil is in your bucket list, your to-do list. If you go to the new areas of the country where you have the agribusiness cities, you won't believe. Cities that 40 years ago were a gas station in a crossing of a road, now you have 100,000 people living in very well conditions, because the money is coming in, and then you have education coming in, and then you have opportunities for architects to work, for personal trainers. That's what happens with agribusiness. When you bring the money, all the service industry works, and you improve the opportunities for people. And it was a huge growth in the last 6 years. Brazil added 18 million new hectares, which is probably more than the area of South Africa, what Brazil added in the last 6 years. And most of these areas, I would say 95 or even more, were converted from pastures. So Brazil has a huge area for pastures, which is underutilized because its average that we have is 1 animal per hectare, which is very, very low. It's grass-fed. And with the development of cattle in Brazil, putting more fertilizer, seeds, and more, let's say, you can confine more the animals and have more yields. Now we have the pastures being released for grains. And this is something that I tell normally when I have a chance to speak in Europe or in the US, because when you give the numbers, people tend to think that, well, then you're going to destroy all the forest because the world's going to grow to 10 billion people. When you look at the chances of growth in terms of food production, Brazil is the easiest way nowadays when you compare all the resources in the world. And then you're going to continue to grow and you're going to destroy the forest. That's the story that we listen. Then you show the numbers of what happened in the last 20 years. And then you show the numbers of the next 10 years where Brazil can increase 20 million new hectares without 1 hectare of forest. It's just taking over 10 million from pastures. Brazil still has 160 million hectares of pastures. So if you pick up 10 million, 1 million per year, and another advantage that we have is that because of the weather, Brazil sometimes can have 2 crops in the same area. So you remove soybeans in January, you enter with corn, and then corn goes until end of April, June. So you can put 2 crops. In some areas, you can even put 3 crops or 5 in 2 years. So if you put 10 million more of second crops, you can add 10 million more hectares. So 10 million more in pastures and 10 million more in second crops using more irrigation, more technology, precocity, biological seeds. This is why I tell people that don't worry with the Brazilian growth because there's land over there and it can be done in a complete sustainable way. Because of technology and because of the geography of the country, the amount of land, the amount of rain, the amount of sun, which is very suitable for agriculture. And if it wasn't Brazil, I wrote an article for China Daily like a year ago. Imagine the situation of the world today in terms of food prices and food crisis if Brazil didn't expand this 18 million new hectares in 6 years. That's almost 100 million tons of grains, from 70 to 80, 85 million tons of grains additional to the world is what Brazil added in 6 years. Imagine the prices of corn, what would be today, the prices of soybeans, and this would bring a huge damage for the meat producers, for instance, in South Africa, because the feed costs would be much higher. So it's the solution for the world is to think where can we expand agriculture to keep prices affordable for consumers, because you know that hunger and food price inflation is the worst for a society because you hit exactly the most poor because they have the largest amount of their income to food. So food inflation destroys any government in terms of popularity. That's why we need to look at the world in terms of technology and see how can we do a sustainable expansion.
Is Brazil still seen as a third world country by the rest of the world, or not?
No, I think it's more emerging economy. It's far away from being a developed economy, but it's in the group of emerging economies. We have the BRICS where we are all together. And there are areas of Brazil, areas in Brazil, like areas that we see here in South Africa, where there's a lot of development going on. And we do have areas like you have here that are going backwards, unfortunately, mostly because of issues in terms of management. That's the same.
Always.
We are very similar in terms of the problems that you have in South Africa and we have in Brazil.
I'd like to ask you a question that refers back to what you were mentioning earlier, how you are in Brazil, the pastures are being converted into to produce other agricultural crops. So it's my understanding that for pastures, you rely on rainfall to let the grass grow. And if you are converting it to other crops, what are you converting it to? And is there enough water resources for this conversion?
It's mostly converted to soybeans. Okay. Soybeans is the leader in terms of growth in Brazil for the last 30 years because it's a crop that's being demanded all over the world. It's an energy supplier, so it's used in feed and it's used in oils. And we have also a growing demand that's not similar to what happens in South Africa, but Brazil has a very high blending of biofuels in our fuel. So in gasoline, 30% is ethanol, mixed to gasoline. And when you go to biodiesel for the trucks, the diesel engines, we are now in 15% of biodiesel blended to diesel. So when you look at the 1 liter, it's 85% coming from oil, 15% coming from agriculture. So soybeans is the leading crop because it generates a lot per hectare. And also corn is growing a lot because of the new projects of corn ethanol, which is very interesting to see because when you enter with corn ethanol or ethanol produced by corn, you have, when you crush 1 ton of corn, you have 400 liters of ethanol and 350 kilos of DDG, which is a feed. It's a feed for animals. And then you attract animals to that region. So you are attracting poultry production, pork production, cattle production, feedlots. And then when you have all the manure, they turn into biogas, biomethane, and fertilizer for the crops. So this is what we call the circular agriculture is booming in the country, mostly when you mix the biofuels with the crops. And so that's the answer to your questions, more soybeans and corn.
And those biofuels, is that mixed by a refinery or does the farmers mix it by themselves on the farm?
No, it's in the middle of the way. So the refiners, they buy the biodiesel from the biodiesel plants and they do the mix, which is obligatory. It's a mandate, governmental mandate. And now there are new markets being created also. And I was here in South Africa in November for a week, and we had a nice conversation with your sugar industry in Durban. And it's a huge opportunity to create jobs in South Africa, is move more to bioenergy, biodiesel and bioethanol, reducing the amount of oil that's imported by the country and generating a lot of jobs. And I'm very positive to this industry because the US proved it, Europe proved it, and Brazil proved it. That's not food versus fuel. It's food and fuel. You can have both in a complementary way.
Because you can't grow or you can't till the soil without something consuming oil.
Yeah.
That's so. It's so counterintuitive. The people that want to stop oil and then they need oil to produce the food that they eat. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. So, what is? Do Brazil work in liters or
liters?
So, what is a liter of diesel or gasoline cost there?
The cost is a little bit cheaper than I've seen here. So a liter of gasoline today would be around 90 cents of a dollar, which would be 15 rands.
Okay.
Something like that. And the diesel, a little bit more expensive, would be 20 rands, 1 liter.
Okay, that's pretty close to what we are paying.
A little bit less than $1. Yeah, there's a lot of taxes over fuel because, we are large government. They like taxes because they need taxes to, inefficiency and all types of things and very heavy judicial system. And these are things that, unfortunately, We need a more pro-reform government that puts society together.
It's the same
and
in South
does some
Africa.
changes.
Yes, it sounds very familiar, what
Yes.
you are saying.
And
Yes.
and how open is Brazil to have outside people? Let's say I want to come and buy a farm in Brazil. Can I do that?
Yes, in a limited way. We had some. We have regulations that foreigners they can buy land, but depending on the amount of land that you have in a certain municipality, that's a small percentage what's being allowed for foreigners to buy land. So we have farmers, I think, from all over the world. U.S. farmers, farmers from New Zealand producing milk, but it's relatively, let's say, it's not by far the majority. It's a limited amount of people. It's
Okay.
the young Brazilian farmers where you see a lot of growth nowadays. And this is different from what I see in other parts of the world. And I have a chance to visit several countries and see their agriculture. In Brazil, another advantage that the country has is the youth. They are very, very attracted to agriculture because agriculture is fashion in the country. So we see that these kids, they go to school, they come back to the farms and they start interacting with their parents, the father, the grandfather. So they bring IT, they bring technology, and this mixes with the experience of the father, the grandfather in buying and selling. And this produces a new era of agriculture that's a real revolution. I used to tell that now we are towards the square meter management and not hectare or
Yes.
acre management anymore. Because you have technology, you have image, you have robots, you have drones, and you have everything that allows you to put the chemical product just over the weed and not to spray like when I studied agronomy 30 years ago. It was liters per hectare. Shh. Now it's just over each weed. And also fertilizer was tons per hectare or kilos per hectare of a certain product. And you sprayed all over, you mixed all over. Now you have only where the soil needs, that's where you're going to put it. So this is a much more resource-saving agriculture together with circular agriculture that makes us confident in the future because research is there to help, and the degree of adoption of innovation in Brazil is something that it's incredible.
Wow.
Driven by farmers, driven by the youth, and also driven by cooperatives and organizations like Citrus Growers Association that you have here in South Africa. Most of our chains, they have their particular associations that are bringing technology and trying to take this to the small farmers, you know. It's very important, associations and cooperatives. I love them. Because they are a way to make the small farmers huge, giants. Like, for instance, the leading coffee company in the world is a Brazilian cooperative that's owned by 20,000 small farmers. So when we talk about soybeans, these are large farmers.
Yes.
When you go to coffee, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 hectares.
Yes.
So they have to gather to become big. And when they build up an organization with 20,000 farmers, imagine their strength in buying fertilizers, chemical products, and their strength in selling, like their suppliers of 20-25% of what Nespresso buys, Starbucks buy from them, 20-25%. And it's owned by 20,000 small farmers. So normally people, that's another image problem. When you talk to society, they think agribusiness is only big people,
Yes.
only big
Yes.
farmers. No, that's not true. It's not in the definition that came from 1957. The definition of agribusiness doesn't involve size. It involves interactions. It involves linkages. And that's what another image problem that agriculture has in the world, or agribusiness, when you consider the chain, the input suppliers, the industry, and all the chain integrated, is that people tend to think that only big big producers, farmers, big companies are in agribusiness. That's not true.
My question is, and as you see, we have the CGA Citrus Summit banner here
That brought you here.
that brought you here. So tell us about the issue and what you will be talking about at the summit.
Well, at the summit, I will do a deep dive in. At least I think it's a deep dive. We have to ask for the audience if they receive it something deep.
Well, if they're not interested, we are very
We
interested.
certainly are.
So it's going to be a general overview of what's going on in the citrus chain, from consumers to the input suppliers, based upon my experience in Brazil and in Europe. That's the largest juice consumer in the world. US also having a lot of issues over there. So I'm going to give a kind of an overview of from consumer to the input suppliers, what are the challenges and what opportunities South Africa can create in order to employ more people, even more people, that they are doing a wonderful job in this industry. I just received the numbers and took a look. It's also an industry that could advertise much more because they are a wonderful product, and I think there's much more opportunities to tell the society the benefits of the orange industry, the orange chain, let's say, in South Africa. So the talk is going to be more linked to the orange situation. And as someone working in business, as a businessman, and also as a professor, I always like to finish with a takeaway for you to change. So I'm going to finish with a list of 10 points for the farmer to be more competitive. Okay. So he can take this home and apply next week.
Okay, do you mind sharing that with us? Because obviously the people listening to us, it's going to be after the summit. Some might be here.
And it's an opportunity to practice.
Yeah. So giving an overview, the orange chain in the world faces a lot of big problems. Unfortunately, it's not a few. I think one of the worst is the consumption decline of orange juice in the world, mostly because you have these new beverages being launched every day. So it's a mixture of fruits, it's vegetable juices, it's flavored water. So if you go back 30 years ago, we used to have soft drinks and orange juice. Now we have a lot of beverages competing, and part of the appeal of the orange juice was lost. So there's a chance of bringing more communication, working this product, as I like to say, as a liquid food because of the content it delivers to society. So at the consumer level, we have this issue. Then we have the issue of diseases. I think it's terrible. Brazil is suffering a lot with greening. Yeah. And Florida almost disappeared. So if you consider the unit of 40.8 kilos, that's what we consider a box, not a carton. Remember that Florida used to produce 250, 260 million boxes per year. Now it's 15. The industry almost disappeared because of
incredibly
greening,
sad.
Development.
From 260
to 16 to 15.
15.
Is that now Florida?
That's Florida.
Yes. It disappeared. Okay. The industry disappeared.
Yeah.
So imagine that you have a capacity built in terms of trucks, in terms of factories, industry for 250, and it comes to 15. So it was.
And it's exactly like you just said. If the agriculture starts communities, and now those communities will slowly disappear again, because the work is not there.
And they also had the issue of real estate development in Florida. You know, everyone wants to live in Florida, so they took over the orange orchards for gated communities and all these kind of things. So two major factors were terrible for Florida. And when you go to São Paulo, because Florida and São Paulo were the two largest orange producing areas in the world. I think we had together, it was 50 or 60% of global orange production just in two states, the state of São Paulo in Brazil and Florida. And São Paulo used to produce 450 million boxes of 40.8 kilos of oranges, and now it's producing 230, 240. Also because of greening. In our case, it's not so much land real estate development. Of course, you have competition with other crops, but it's the increasing production cost of orange because to control the diseases, to control greening is very difficult. I think we have now something like 45% of the oranges in our state, orange trees are infected. So you have to replace them, production costs.
And you can't really just replace them because it's not like the pest is going away.
Yeah, it's terrible. So we are working hard. Funde Citrus is working hard. It's the Citrus Research Institute of Brazil.
Funde Citrus is where Marcelo was from.
Yes, you interviewed them. And they are doing a lot of research. There's good things coming because they have now a chance of a tree that look how science is beautiful, and I love science because science is in front of us to help us to solve our problems. So what they discovered that the psyllid doesn't sit in the guava tree. So then they started studying why, and they discovered that the guava tree has a gene that produces a smell in the tree that it's a repellent.
They don't like it.
They don't like it. The orange has one that has the same gene, but it's weaker.
It's suppressed, yeah.
It's weaker. So now what they've done, they removed the gene from the guava and put this gene in the orange. So the orange now has a stronger gene, and the new orange tree has the smell that doesn't attract the psyllid that infects the tree with greening. So that's the new thing coming.
So
that's incredibly
that's
cool.
Incredible. That's
wow.
science. That's GMO, which I'm totally in favor because I don't think we're gonna get sick because we are drinking an orange juice that has a gene of the guava.
No.
But, there's a lot of ideology behind this, and that's another hour or 2 hours that we need to talk. But I think science will win.
How far down the road is this initiative? Obviously, they know they can do this.
But
are those trees existing already?
The trees are already there. They're being tested. The problem is that for you to replace,
and multiply.
They multiply the trees, and then for you to replace, it's going to take at least 5 years for you to have a commercial crop.
But at least there's a solution.
But
and you have a lot of other things that should be worked in this case. That is imagine how consumers will receive this new product, how regulators in Europe mostly, in other countries, in Japan, will deal with that, because it is a product that has genetics over it. So GMO is a very bad word, and people hate GMO. So it's let's say it has a genetic improvement.
Yeah, and it's
a good way of putting it.
And it's a difficult thing because like you said, citrus has got that gene in, but now you need to go find which one expresses that gene much more than the other varieties, and then start breeding that in. So then you are taking a 5-year project and making it a 50-year project.
Well, they're studying this. It's a Spanish guy, very nice, Mr. Leandro, and together with Funde Citrus, they are working in this project for more than 10 years. Can you imagine 10 years of your life?
Yeah.
I have a dream. Now the dream came
and then you get to year 11 and it fails.
Yeah.
We hope not.
Well, there's a lot of innovations. They're also working there for 10 years and didn't work.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like innovations this way. You
breeding,
have 10 or 15 things or 100 things going on, and then there's just 1 or 2 that's going to come to market and produce results. And with these results, you have to pay all the others also because they generate a lot of expenses.
Yes, yes.
At least there's hope. Because if you, as you explained about what happened in Florida, if this can be propagated and moved down the road, there's good hope for the Brazilian industry.
I think that's not only for the Brazilian industry, but for the orange juice consumer. Because imagine Brazil puts 80% of what's imported by the world, 80 comes from Brazil. And if we disappeared, it means that there's no more orange juice in the shelves of European supermarkets. In Europe, each 10 cups of orange juice, 9 come from Brazil. So we just have to think about living in a world without orange juice. We don't have juice anymore because the disease has destroyed the supply. So is that what consumers want? This is why I think it's not going to be difficult for them to accept that a modified product can keep the orange in the shelves. And it's just a question of doing the tests and explaining that's safe. And I think it's not going to be difficult to show that. The taste will be the same. You're not going to have a smell.
Yes.
You're not going to drink orange juice with the smell of guava because that's not what changed it.
It's to explain and convince consumers of what you just explained to us. That's another massive task.
Yes.
It's actually explaining to them that it's all still an orange, and there is a little bit of guava in there, but you're not going to taste the guava. You're not going to smell the guava. It's just going to be orange juice that's resistant to a disease.
And can you imagine that this tree will require much less chemical products?
Yes, isn't that incredible?
Yeah,
And
because
that-
it's going to be much safer in terms of chemicals. Of course, the product that you drink today, the orange juice, is safe because they do all the tests. You know, they have the crop management, the chemical products used, the amount of time that you have to all the regulations linked to chemicals, and you can imagine that the clients of Brazilian juice mostly are Coke, Pepsi. You cannot imagine the amount of tests they do because they
Exactly.
don't want to end up with a product that has any type of problem. So it's very, very safe. But for the environment, it's going to be better because you may require less chemical products for the combats of the diseases.
and
as
that
in-
should also make it cheaper.
I hope so.
We hope
to
so.
to
Should.
produce.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you have much more yields, this price, this efficiency, normally what happens in agriculture is that when you have efficiency, it's transferred to the final consumers in terms of price because it's a competition. You can control prices. So if you have the double of poultry being produced in the same factory, or if you have the double of soybeans in the same area, part of these gains will be transferred to final consumers. That's what happens in agriculture. So we may expect juice to come back to a reasonable price. Today, the price, it's incredible, the price of orange juice. One of the big questions that I have is what will happen with consumption because the price is twice or three times what it used to be 3 or 4 years ago. So this will also impact people in their choices, and we may have also a problem of orange juice losing shelf space that you
Yes.
conquered in decades. So a lot of difficulties coming.
And okay, I've got two questions. So that smell that's possibly in the guava tree that's now being implemented, that can't be isolated and then be made like a pheromone that could be hanged out into orchards, for instance. And you don't know if they've worked on
I
something.
don't know
like that.
because I'm not a technical in this area, but it can be an idea. So you put not only this smell, it may have other smells also that is a repellent, natural repellent of for the psyllid, and they must spray this and help it to control. And there are also some plants that the insect avoids. So one possibility is for you to circle your orchard
Yes.
with these kind of plants because then the insect is moving and it leaves.
Yes.
Because there's a kind of a fence. So it's a lot of technology going on. I love to listen to these guys because they are thinking in ideas like you just thought in one, and there's a lot to come.
Wow. So what does this have? What's the impact of this on South African producers that might be thinking of, maybe I should put a small juice plant into my pack house? Would you recommend people look at that, seeing as what's coming in the future?
South Africa is a very traditional supplier, high quality of fresh oranges. It competes globally in scale and in marketing. There's other possibilities that I think the industry could explore even more That is the issue of sustainability in terms of people, the African flavor, and all these kind of things that could be more driven to international community to enhance the fruit production here. But what I think is that there is a need of expansion, because you can see the coffee prices in the world today. You can see the orange prices in the world today. You can see the cocoa prices in the world today. So it's an issue that we are having climate problems in several producing areas. And soybeans, if you have a climate issue in the US, Brazil can expand, South Africa can expand, the world can expand, and in 4 months, you have the amount of soybeans back again, because it's a crop that takes 4 months. But when you're talking about orange, you need to start today to do the initial harvesting 3 years from now. Coffee, almost the same story. Now, if you go to other commodities like paper and pulp for cellulose, it's 6 years. And what I see is that cocoa, the same story. What I see is that in terms of the commodities that need more time, and with the growth of the population, we need more areas in the world to expand, because we're having supply problems. And you can see the prices skyrocketed of most of these commodities because of the heat, because of the dry weather. So you may face a dry weather here in South Africa, which is even making irrigation impossible because there's no water. A drought, and Brazil had in the last 10 years, I think we had 3 or 4 years that were very bad in terms of weather for the orchards, for the trees. And then the heat was incredible. So we need more production in the world to face the growing demand. And I think for South Africa, that already has the channels, sells for more than 100 countries, it's a possibility of expansion with technology to include more people. So I think the industry has a positive way forward, although we had the container crisis like 3 years ago because of COVID. This was terrible for everyone that needs containers to export. And I know South Africa suffered a lot. And it's an issue that we should pay attention, because today the world is so complicated. We have the changes that will be given by the U.S. president. Every day there's a new measure coming. We have, people can attack a vessel with a drone, and then you have to move from the Canal of Suez, the Canal of Panama, then you have to circle all Africa, and then a container takes 15 days more with the same product. Then you have lack of containers in the world.
More.
It costs more. So we are very delicate in terms of supply chains. I think that's a problem that we have. The risks are all over, and they are higher. I used to say that we are living in a world with a violent variation of the variables. Things are varying in a violent way. So this brings a lot of threats for who's producing. And this is why you need more expansion, because there's going to be problems in places of the world. So I think the market will be there. And there is a chance of South Africa to increase this industry, generating more employment and more income for the country, more taxes and other things. But then, I don't know the issue here, but in Brazil, this is something that's different from our society, from what I heard of my last trip here last year in November, is that there is labor to work here waiting for opportunities. In Brazil, the number one problem that we face today, as incredible as it seems for you to listen, is labor. We have labor shortages in all activities. The country is almost at full employment, and you cannot find people to work. Like, I finished a strategic plan for our poultry and pork industry. And when you go to the slaughterhouses, the industry, the meat industry, there are 20,000 positions open.
20,000?
20,000, waiting for people to come and start working.
But to do what?
To harvesting oranges is very complicated for you to find people nowadays. To harvest coffee And I used to tell the industry in Brazil, you know, that if we don't have mechanization coming, maybe in 5 years or 10 years from now, we don't have people anymore to harvest oranges. So we have a huge problem with labor in the country.
And what is the minimum wage for, or what would a wage for somebody like that be? Because I can tell you now, as soon as you start talking money, you'll get people that might be interested. So South Africa has got a big population of, sorry to put it frankly, but white farmers working in the US on their H2A system, working on grain farms, and they're doing a fantastic job. They are making decent living there to support their families back home. If the opportunities is there for Brazil, I think the only thing there might be is maybe a language barrier, but to get people to go over there to work.
I just giving an example. I finished a strategic plan for one poultry company in Brazil. 1/3 of their employees are from Venezuela and Haiti, people that migrated and are working in Brazil. So that's already happening.
I think you would be exactly what Jewald was saying, is if Brazil were to do a little bit more advertising and looking around in South Africa, you would find labor from here very quickly. You know, our country's got between 30 and 40% unemployment, and 66% youth.
In Brazil is 6%.
Yes, we have 66% youth unemployment. So we are sitting with 1 in 3 young people have a job. So if the Brazilians are looking for labor, I can tell you where to find it.
This is why I think in a strategic plan for agribusiness in South Africa, or for the government of South Africa, this activities in agriculture, in agribusiness, where you are competitive and they are intensive in terms of labor, this should be a priority. This should be a priority. Like you can produce a lot of people working in sugarcane and convert this to ethanol and stop importing the amount of oil, keep the resources being built in the country, expand horticultural, expand fruit production. These would be areas that if I was producing a plan, I would look at, because they are quick hits for people to start working and build up their lives. And I think in a world where we have growing demand for food, if you look at what's left for our countries, because I can talk about Brazil, and I think it's similar to the US. We're not going to lead the computer building activity in the world, or car manufacturing activity in the world. So it's not available. You have China, you have a lot of people with a huge scale, cost advantage, working with design. And I can talk about Brazil. What's left for us is to produce food.
Yeah, those people building the cars must eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody must eat.
So
you can live without
and
a
we
car,
are fortunate.
but everybody must eat.
And South Africa is fortunate because we have resources. And when you look at this world going to 10 billion people, and this growth is going to be in Africa and Asia mostly, like 80% of the stomachs in the world in 2050, 80% will be in Africa. So there's something that you should consider. There's an internal market in Africa which is going to be booming, I think, because of the development of several nations and the urbanization going on in the big cities, to increase the amount that's sold to these countries in these cities. It's in Africa and Asia. If you look at the Americas and Europe, we're going to be 20% of the stomachs in the world. So there are several possibilities, I think. Of course, government should work in an efficient way, in an honest way all over, in order to see the opportunities and make it flexible for the business to win. So it's not the government that's going to do anything. Who's going to do is the business.
Yes.
So we should, and I visited the port of Durban in November, and I see there's a lot to be built over there. If you consider the most competitive ports in the world, and then you look at what you have in some ports of South Africa, in most of the ports in Brazil, there's a lot that can be done. in terms of gaining efficiency, reducing costs, reducing the time that the vessels are waiting, because every day they're waiting, you pay more.
Every
and
minute,
it's
minute they wait,
less
you pay.
efficiency in containers. So I'm very, very liberal. I think governments should help in terms of producing the rules for the players to do a nice game. The government's not going to play. He's not a player, but he's the one producing the rules of the game, having good institutions, so then the organizations can succeed and the private sector can succeed, and nothing better than markets to create opportunities for people, to create jobs. But I think the governments can give the directions, looking at the opportunities that we have in the world and the assets that you have in the country, the strength, and taking the right decision, the right strategy.
I think it's been incredible what you have shared with us about Brazil. Incredibly positive information that you've shared. It's not often you hear that much good news, and it is phenomenal to hear. I think one of the challenges is South Africa, we actually know very little about Brazil. We know very little about the whole of South America. And I think one of the problems is the language barrier. And I think if we struggle with that, maybe the language barrier extends beyond just our understanding. Maybe the rest of the world, it's also a language barrier. So it sounds to me like you guys need to be putting out a bit more PR about how amazing Brazil is. That's just a thought. Yes.
I've got before we get to an end, please tell us about those points that you want to share about business for
farmers.
Yes,
I didn't forget this. I would bring it in when I have a chance again, because I forgot when I was answering that question.
No problem.
But, well, I think for farmers is I'm talking a little bit about the style that I have. I think one very important topic is the financial management, taking care of cash flows. And I normally say to farmers all over the world, first you have to get better and then you get bigger. So first you create margins, you create value, and then you create size. That's very, very important for farmers, not to do activities that will bring them to a very high level of debt with this growing interest rates, removing part of what they're generating. So first get better, apply what's there in terms of technology in your soil. There's a lot of knowledge today in terms of soil regeneration. Soil is an asset, so it's not the amount of hectares that you have only, but the quality of the soil that you have. So that's one of the topics. Another topic that's very important, I'm merging them, not to say all the 10 here, because it's going to be boring for people, but it's to understand the markets and study doing the exchange of products in terms of when to buy and when to sell. It's very important when you do the exchange and follow the numbers to know now it's a good moment to buy fertilizers. Now it's a good moment to buy chemicals. Now it's a good moment to do my contracts to sell my crop. So I think this is the second topic that I would say, the financial management, the moments to buy and to sell, cost controls. They don't do a nice job in terms of controlling costs. So you should measure everything. You should compare. You should cut whatever you have that's not adding value. So this starts with having the numbers. Sometimes I talk to farmers and what was your production cost of the bag of soybeans? They don't answer. It's not because they are ashamed of the number, but because they don't have the number.
Yes.
Be innovative and apply what's available in terms of technology. So look at what's going on in terms of irrigation, in terms of biologicals, in terms of new products, in terms of apps, in terms of drones. So we cannot, as a farmer, tell people, well, this doesn't work. So you have to test it. And then this will make you become better. So in terms of behavior, being innovative, controlling costs, taking care of finance, studying the best moments to buy and to sell, And then comes the issue of being more an educator, to have your people as the most efficient employees in the industry. So producing the most you can per hectare. So having the highest profit per hectare. Normally I say to farmers, you can tell me that you have 10,000 hectares, but there's a person that has 1,000 hectares that's more profitable per hectare than you are. So I think that's another topic that you should pay attention. And then being an educator, sharing results. I think it's very important to retain people that you share part of your profits to all your team, all your employees. And maybe the last point would be to become a person that's more has a collective behavior. So participate more in CGA, help the country in producing good collective organizations that will interfere in politics, making a larger number of federal deputies, of people in Senate. You know, it's very important. I see one of the strong points of Brazil is that we have around 500 federal deputies in the country. It's a very large country. We could have less than that, but you know, 500. And we have 300 that are linked to the agriculture lobby. So it's very difficult for the government to apply something that's going to be bad for agriculture, like export taxes or export ban or restrictions or new regulations that make the activity tougher, because it's not going to be approved in Congress. Because the sector was able to increase the amount of people elected that are defending agriculture, being from the left or for the right. It doesn't matter. In this 300, you have people from all over, but they are defending the value generation in agriculture. So I think sometimes farmers, they think that they are not responsible of doing things together with other farmers, being it to improve communications, using social media, or to doing lobby, to helping the organizations like CGA to be more competitive. So I think this would be probably the last point. Farmers should behave more in the way of strengthening their community, strengthening the business where they are, helping with money, helping with participation, which is also money because it's your time. And this is something that, in terms of the farmer of the future, one of the topics that I think they should improve.
The fruit industry and the wine industry is particularly well poised for being educators, because there's a lot of consumers that consume the products. And I've always said, tell everything. You can speak to your phone. Yes, it's not always fun to speak to a phone, but just show everything.
Yeah.
If you are going to spray today for psyllids for HLB, tell why you're spraying. Say what it's going to cost. Just tell everything, because then, and this is, nobody has taken me up on this thing yet, and I've mentioned it to a few, that will create more trust with your product, with your consumer, because they will be seeing it. It's not, you're not selling to your chemical provider, you're not selling to your agronomist, you're selling to somebody who's going to eat your product. And the more trust they've got in your product, the higher the chance of them buying it.
This is what I tell them, because remember, and you were involved with media, like the channels that we had 20 years ago to talk to people were the traditional newspapers, TV channels. Now it's Instagram, it's LinkedIn, it's Facebook, you know, it's WhatsApp groups, it's TikTok. Yeah. So I'm stimulating farmers to become users of these technologies. So you can create, and we have a lot of cases of success in Brazil, that farmers that created a channel on Instagram, for instance, on TikTok, and they put their day-to-day activities over there. And then what happens? Finally, you can see like a retired fireman in Joburg which is following the life of this guy. And he understands now that the juice that he's drinking did not got born in the supermarket. There's a chain behind it. The milk didn't wasn't born in the
in the
you know,
bottle.
it
wasn't laid.
There's difficulties behind it. So this improves the image because people see how tough agriculture is. It's a factory at open skies.
Yes.
So this is very tough. And I think they can improve it because it's not difficult for them to learn how to use it. And suddenly people start following you and you have a direct linkage to communicate. And then you have thousands of people doing that. It's much different than 20 years ago, where for me to have my idea, I would need to write an article for a newspaper.
And you would have had to pay.
Wait for 10 days for them to publish.
And you had to pay the magazine.
Sometimes you had to pay the magazine. Today there's a revolution in how communication goes to people. And I think agriculture can benefit because, again, it's a good product with a poor communication. And now you made communication much easier. So this is a possibility of solving and taking the idea of how good agriculture is, how good CGA is, and all the citrus farmers in South Africa, the benefit that they bring. If you do an interview with people in a train station in Joburg, they don't know this.
No.
They don't know this. So now the social media will make it possible for them to know.
And what you were saying about the article that you publish, if you write an article and you published it, you would not get any feedback unless somebody phoned you. Now, you've got it immediately, you get feedback. You can get positive feedback, informative feedback, negative feedback, but you will get feedback.
That's another big change that we have in the world today because it's much more democratic, the access to be listened. And we had 2 events in Brazil last year that maybe it's a short story that I can tell you because it's linked to the first question, the environmental question. So we had one of the biggest retailers in the world and one of the biggest milk companies in the world. I'm not going to tell their names, but they're French multinationals. They did the bad communication. Their speech was very negative. An interview given to the media, or they did aggression to Brazilian production. You know what happened? Less than 1 week after, both had to ask excuses. The CEO of probably the largest supermarket chain in the world, second largest, they had to ask excuses because the reaction was so huge in social media, in their social media, as a person and the company, that it started bothering the board of directors, and then they started receiving protests in the supermarkets, people not buying their products anymore, doing videos that they had to come back and say, I'm sorry, what I told about Brazil is not right. So I ask excuses. Imagine when this would happen 10 years ago. That's just a short example of how people should take care nowadays in what they tell, what they say, because depending if you did an aggression to a certain country, let's say people say, oh, I've seen that I'm not going to buy South African oranges because there's slavery in labor. You may find, of course, in all business, you have people that are criminals. You may find cases, but these are cases, and you can't generalize to the industry, and you can't destroy the image that South African built because you found one case or found 2 cases. But now there's a reaction. And normally in the past, you would receive the aggression, and well, I have to buy a page in the newspaper of London, which costs millions, to tell whatever you learn, you listen, it's not true. Now social media goes over like a tsunami, and then people get the right information. So this is is a new world for all of us. Yeah.
It certainly is. And I mean, like you're saying, the consumer has found their voice and they say their piece.
Yeah.
To the point where people are like the people that did what you explained. They have to eat humble pie and apologize.
Yeah.
Right. We've got a closing tradition on our podcast where we get a question from one of our previous guests for you. They didn't know who it was going to be for, so it's a random question. We're going to get one from you also.
It's always fun.
It can be an easy question. For instance, if I like South African wines, I can help.
Well, that's
you.
not a difficult answer. Most people do. So the question is, and I went to this one because the other ones you've kind of answered, but what makes you excited about what you do? Because you are very excited and you are so interesting. And
Yes, positive.
what makes you excited? What fires that?
Well, it's the chance that I have as someone that loves agricultural activity, is that I look at the effort of farmers, and they are bringing to me food, they are bringing to me fun, they are bringing to me entertainment. And I think to work in this environment makes me very happy because I can see people growing grapes, I can drink the wine, and I can become happy. I can see people growing soybeans, and then I can eat the poultry or the pork that used soybeans as a feed, and I'm going to be happy. And this happiness is not only brought by the flavor that I am receiving, by the social moments, because normally we eat or we drink when we gather, when we are with other people, so you have the social moments. But as someone that's very, very worried with people, with generating opportunities for people, when I'm drinking, when I'm eating, I see jobs. I see families moving forward because of the money that we are spending to buy the food, the drinks, the bioenergy that we're using. So I think what makes me happy to work in agriculture is that I have a chance to see this, and I have a chance to educate people in how this works as a professor, as someone that created a university. So this is what makes me excited, because it's an industry that brings us fun, entertainment, job creation, and the possibility to find new friends. Because when you're traveling, when you're visiting other industries, discussing, like the chance that I have now to discuss the plans, the future plans with CGA, you are always connecting to people that are as excited as you are. So this brings even more excitement.
Wow, that's an incredible
Yes.
final answer. Thank you so much. It's been, in the old-fashioned sense of the word, it's been awesome, because we are awed by what you're telling us about
Yes.
Brazil. It's just incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so
It's
much.
my pleasure, and probably you enjoyed, because my excitement with South
Yes.
Africa is very high. I love the country, I love the people, I see the difficulties that you have day to day, and how you're trying to work to solve it. And the country is so beautiful in terms of food, in terms of fun, in terms of geography, touristic areas. So I am a believer in the future of your country.
Thank you. We need more people like you.
Yes.
Thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.